This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Hey, it's my pleasure to welcome Gino Barbaro to the show. He is a multifamily investor. He's got about 1,000 units now. He did not syndicate any of those. That's important to know. He purchased them, I believe, all with his partner, Jake. We'll hear more about that and dive into his success story here. Gino, welcome. How are you?
Jason, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Where are you located?
I am in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm a recent transplant of New York, actually. So I've been living the dream down in Florida right now for the last 8 or 9 months.
Good stuff. Yeah, St. Augustine's one of our markets. Been active in there and Jacksonville for many years. And so, yeah, we like those markets. Now, is that where your properties are, or your properties in different markets?
No, the majority of our properties are in Knoxville and Eastern Tennessee. So my partner, Jake, moved from New York, relocated to Knoxville, Tennessee about 6 or 7 years ago. And we just started buying in Knoxville. We love the market there. Good
stuff. Yeah. We like Tennessee a lot. We've done hundreds of deals in Memphis. I mean, that's been a really big market for us. I think it's always helpful if you kind of take the listeners through your first deal. How many units was it? Did you ever invest in single family, or did you just go straight to apartments? Kind of what's your story?
Sure, Jason. Well, on our first deal, Jake and I took about 18 months to find it. What was really positive for me, I was working at my restaurant. I had a restaurant business at the time, and I just wanted to get out of the restaurant business. Jake was the vaccine rep, so I call myself, the pizza guy and the drug rep. I was really motivated to get out of that, and I just didn't want to get into single-family homes because I just didn't think I'd be able to manage my time, manage my business full-time. So Jake and I focused strictly on multifamily. I like the space, and unfortunately, in New York, it was very difficult to buy multifamilies and cash flow. So that's why we focused on Knoxville, Tennessee. Jake was the quote-unquote boots on the ground, and we were going to actually self-manage. We wanted to learn the management aspect of the business.
Right.
So we ended up purchasing a 25-unit property, which was not huge, not small. I always tell people, think big, start small.
Yeah, that's
you can
good.
always pivot.
Yeah.
You can always pivot. You have any problems. If there's any problems, you can handle it. And for us, 25 units was great. We could manage it part-time or full-time while we had our full-time occupations. I've got a big family, so I had other responsibilities. So I said, let me dip my toe in the water. Let me see how it is. On that first deal, it was 25 units. It was a mixture of 1 bedrooms, some cottages. We had a 6-unit efficiency on there. It was a little hotel, 6-unit efficiency. We had 4 plexes on there. It was a mixture of properties. What we liked about it, the numbers made a lot of sense. And the other thing was we got owner financing on our very first deal. We had a great broker. He knew about it. He actually said that these people are, they're selling, they're mom and pop sellers, what we like to call motivated sellers. They will entertain seller financing. So with the $600,000 purchase price, we were able to put down 10% as part of the down payment as seller finance, and we came up with 10% down payment, and the bank came up with the remainder of the 80% bank financing. So we came out of pocket on this deal with all closing costs. We put it down $83,000, and we owned a $600,000 asset. So we were off the races on the first one.
Yeah, good for you. Okay, so on that first one, did you put money down, or did owner financing cover everything? Or tell us about that.
Nope. What happened was we were only able to secure 10% as the owner finance. The other 10% of the portion, we need to come up with 10% of the down payment. So 10% of the $600,000 was $60,000. Throw in the closing costs, it came up to a total of $83,000. So me, Jake, and on that first deal, my brother Mark partnered with us. So the 3 of us, we ended up buying it. We ended up closing it. February of 2013, I'll never forget that date because it was our very first one. That first one is always the nerve-wracking one. Did I do it right? Did I get the right financing? Did I buy the right deal? And we were just thrilled we had a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like your philosophy that you wanted to self-manage and get in there and, learn it, because you learn so much by self-managing, trial by fire in some ways. But management really isn't that hard, is it? Or is it?
in the multifamily space, the reason why we liked it is, on our second deal we bought 4 months later, we had a total of 63 units. We were almost at that point where we could start hiring full-time help. See, with the single families and the multis that I was dealing with in New York, I was basically the landlord. I was the one managing and self-managing, so I didn't have the opportunity to hire outside help. With the multifamily, on our first 25 units, we had a resident manager on the property. So that was a big help for us. But I think everybody has to get their feet wet, because even if you're going to hire a property management company, you still want to be able to have some type of system in place. You still want to be able to have the system on how to do application fees, how to move a tenant in, how to move a tenant out, how to evict a tenant. You have to go through those pain points. And I think everyone should at least for a couple months manage their own properties, get comfortable with whatever software they're going to use. And then if they want to hand it off to a property management company, great. But you have to at least be able to see how to do it yourself before you can tell somebody else how to do it.
I agree. And there's a distinction here that I want to make sure the audience catches. And the distinction is that you said you hired an on-site manager. I'm guessing, although I may be wrong, that was a hire that you made directly. It wasn't a management company. There's a big difference between hiring a management company and saying, okay, staff our leasing office and that kind of stuff. And wait, on-site for just 25 units? You wouldn't have an on-site manager for that, would you?
That's a huge distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. We had a resident manager. In a lot of these properties, you can hire somebody as a quote-unquote resident manager.
Yeah, they just live there. Right. But that's a little different.
Exactly.
So another distinction, if we may. Typically in the multifamily world, the sort of metric is when you get above about 75 units in the complex, usually the economy of scale will allow you to have a leasing office and an on-site person. Now, there's a difference between a resident manager who just happens to live there and is, maybe taking reduced rent or a little bit of pay or some deal that you cut with them, and they're sort of keeping an eye on things. Maybe they have a wrench and, will fix a few things or call the, specialist for something, or collect rents. But they're not like a leasing agent, which is sort of a different concept, is a person who's hopefully like a professional in an office, and there's an office on site, right? So that's another layer of distinction, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, and that's what we had. On the 25 units, we had a resident manager who was living there. We were comping him an apartment. We were still, quote unquote, managing it. Jake was still running to the property for the first 6 months, couple days a week, meeting tenants. And the resident manager, they should have certain skills where they can at least help you turn a unit when you have to actually rehab a unit to get it ready for a tenant. They should be able to at least collect rents, or at least tell the people on site, this is how we collect rents. They should be able to show an apartment. And like you said, if something goes wrong, if there's a repair on the property, they should at least be there to allow somebody to come and fix the problem. So that's what we started out with. But then when you start scaling up and started getting bigger, we just created our own property management company where we started hiring out leasing agents. And these small properties, what we ended up doing was the first 2 properties were small. We ended up creating an office at our third property, which serviced these first 2 properties, because you alluded to the economies of scale. And that's one of the wonderful things with multifamily. You have these economies of scale where you can already start hiring property managers, you can start hiring leasing agents, maintenance techs full-time. You can start formulating and creating a business out of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've done many episodes and I get the question all the time, what's better, right? Is it better to build a portfolio of 50 or 100 single-family homes, or is it better to just buy 1 or 2 apartment complexes, right, to get the same number of doors maybe? And so you definitely get higher quality tenants in single family homes. I mean, no one will argue with that. They stay longer usually, right? But on a single family home, it's harder to increase the income, because, at least a larger multifamily, you can really create some new income streams. You stick a vending machine on the property, and suddenly it's not much money, but it will multiply by your cap rate, right? And so you do that. You put a coin-operated laundry machines or something like that if you have space for it. I mean, there are different things you can do. So let's kind of go through that. What are some of the pros and cons of multifamily versus single family?
I think the biggest con of multifamily is it's in people's minds. I think the majority of people think there's a barrier to entry in multifamily, so they don't even try to get into it So they stay in the single family home space. And what I see happening is when there's less competition in something, the prices are a little bit easier. Well, multifamily's gotten a lot more ratcheted up, but if you go into the single family home space, you have a lot of guys bidding on those assets because they don't think they can get into multifamily. So that to me is great. I like that.
But multifamily has tons of competition. What are you talking about? Like people are lining up at the door to buy these apartments.
There is now, but when I was doing that 3 or 4 years ago, you got to remember one thing: there's so much cash and so much money flowing in our economy right now. It has to go somewhere, and unfortunately, the last couple of years, it has pivoted to multifamily. Although, go buy a single family home right now, the returns there have dropped. I think even more than multifamily. But I think the barrier to entry was always there, and I still think I deal with it with students right now. They're always focusing on where do I get the money, because you need bigger down payments to get into it. But there's so many other strategies to get, whether it's a partnership or syndication. But I think one of the pros in multifamily, I think, is the economies of scale, is the ability to create a business. And what I think people should do is just really take a step back and take a look at what your goals are. What do you want to do with your life? Why are you getting into a specific niche, whether it's mobile home parks, whether it's a single family space, whether it's multifamily, whether it's office? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think if you're in a specific market and you're a residential broker and you're liking to buy these single family homes, and you can really buy them at a terrific price point where you're buying them below what the appraised value is, and you're accumulating them, and you have a portfolio lender where you can do that, and you're managing them yourself. That's a nice little job, and that's a nice little business you can build for yourself. If you're looking to become an asset manager, grow the business, grow the portfolio, create that passive income, create that cash flow, start doing cost segregation on these deals, and start getting excited about that aspect of it, I think multifamily is your calling.
Yeah, interesting. And now you can, of course, do cost seg on single-family homes, but a lot of times the economics don't make it work. I will tell you, for you single-family home people listening, I did a show recently with I think it was a CPA. I'm not positive he was a CPA offhand, but this guy developed like a really easy system to do cost seg studies that will withstand audit. I mean, he claims at least. And for $995 per property. So it's actually economical to do on single family homes sometimes. Now, I remember we did a cost seg study on an apartment complex I owned with a partner, a client of ours, 125 units, and that cost like $30,000. I mean, we paid a lot of money for that.
Yep.
It ultimately was worth it, but man, that was a big CPA bill.
It is worth it. Let me tell you, once you see that tax savings and everything gets, depreciated really quickly in the first 5 years, the write-offs are fantastic. And on top of that, our thing is we keep buying. So we keep buying these properties, we keep cost segregating them. And then every 5 years, the cost segregation resets. So when you do an additional roof or more, CapEx requirements, you start, cost segregating that again. The clock starts again, but we keep buying. We've been buying for the last 5 years. So we cost segregate all our properties. The carries go forward. So that's one of the benefits of multifamily. And that's why a lot of guys who are super wealthy, guys who are attorneys and doctors are looking for those write-offs. That's another reason why multifamily has elevated over the last 3 to 4 years. There's a really big benefit to it.
Yeah, well, the problem is, though, you got to be a real estate professional to take advantage of all those write-offs.
You do.
If you're an attorney or a doctor, not that attorneys and doctors even make very much money anymore. That's another discussion. But I know a lot of very poor attorneys, trust me, and they're very poor at their job, too, a lot of them.
Well, that's why they're poor, right?
Well, even a lot of good ones are kind of poor. It's just the whole world's just changed. It's not what it used to be. But anyway, they can't take advantage of all those write-offs anyway, right? I mean, they got to be active in managing the properties and get real estate professionals.
As far as we go, yeah, I mean, as far as we go, you still get the regular depreciation from the property. So if you're not getting cost segregation, you're still getting depreciation from the property. We have a guy that we use. We love him. I don't want to speak to it because I'm not a tax attorney or a CPA, but I know it's a huge benefit. I know a lot of these guys are looking for those write-offs. So to us, that's a huge benefit, really big benefit for us.
Check with your accountant, folks, because I don't think you can take that if you're making over $100,000 a year or so. That's something to keep in mind. Okay, well, what else do you see in it? Tell us some of the ways you've improved the income on your multifamily properties, because that's a real opportunity. That is one area where the multifamily beats the single family. Although, maybe let me give you a big fat bone to chew on here. So that's true. You can definitely improve income on the multifamily. You can't really do it on single family. It's just one dimensional. It's like raise the rent, right? But the single family you can sell to an illogical, irrational buyer that'll pay you a premium because you put nice flowers in the front and have curb appeal. On the multifamily, there's a little bit of that because we're all human, but not much of it, right? They're mostly buying it based on income. And the single family, when the housing affordability index starts pumping and, the glory days are here, you catch those market cycles and the appreciation is just so out of whack with anything logical, right? You have two audiences when you're a seller of a single family home. You have investors, but you also have regular home buyers. And the home buyers don't act rationally. Well, neither do investors completely, but see what I'm getting at there?
Yes,
yeah.
I totally understand. I guess my counter argument to that is I'm an investor, so I buy on cash flow. So whatever the appreciation on the property, the cap appreciation, it's all icing on the cake for me. So I don't want to try to time a market cycle. We might
totally agree, by the way. Right, totally agree. Yeah, go.
Yeah, if you're buying a multifamily property, correct, you're buying it at the market cap rate. You're looking to increase the NOI. So if you can buy it at, let's say, a 5 or 6 cap rate, you're increasing it to a 7 or 8 cap rate. That's where you're making your money in multifamily, on top of always positively cash flowing. So, in the single family home space, if you can buy right, you bought property 4 and 5 years ago, you're in the green right now because you probably were cash flowing at the time. Plus you got that elevated market going on right now. If you're buying right now, it's a little bit tight. I mean, property has elevated and it's a little bit difficult. The thing with, multifamily, there's so many different ways to increase the revenue. I think you have a little bit more control with multifamily. You can force the appreciation because you're buying it based on actual numbers. And if you do your due diligence and you know that they're under rented and you know that there's fees that can be collected and you know that you can get a cable contract on there, or you can do laundry revenue on there, or you can add additional units to a property. There's a lot of things that you can do. And we can go through them if you like.
That is awesome. Tell us how you've done this on some of yours. I mean, what did you do? Did you sub-meter utilities? Did you put a laundry room in? What do you do? And tell us how it worked out for you, in terms of your metrics.
That's a good question. I'll just go through one of our properties we bought in March of 2016, 2 years ago. It was 156 units. We saw the property was in a nice area of town. What we ended up doing was we ended up putting in a dog park. We ended up cleaning up the pool, put a nice pool deck. We ended up renovating the clubhouse. We ended up putting in a little fitness center. So we added amenities to the property. So we knew right then and there, rents were already low to begin with. So when we added all those amenities, we knew we were going to attract a much better tenant base. So right off the top, we had rents go up between $50 and $75 each on that. We were able to institute RUBS, which is ratio utility billing, which in multifamily, instead of adding sub-meters into every apartment, you just do your ratio utility where you can bill back to each tenant, each unit, based on whether it's the square footage of the unit or the number of residents in there. So we were able to do that also. The laundry revenue was another huge one for us. We actually got in the company. We split the revenue with them. They supplied us with the machines. They gave us a certain little commission up front to say, hey, thanks for coming here. So we got brand new machines on the property. We kept 60% of the revenue. They kept 40% of the revenue. Fortunately, on this property was amazing. We actually had a cable contract signed a month before we took over the property. So the cable revenue came to us was a $50,000 contract. So we stepped in on day one with about $49,000 worth of cable revenue. Basically, what we did is we had a 7-year exclusive for the cable company. I think it was Comcast at the time. And hey, that is found money. That was awesome. Storage, if you have any storage sheds on the property, they were using a couple laundry rooms. We consolidated the laundry rooms. We turned them into 1-bedroom units, and we actually consolidated laundry into one facility. So we added a couple of units on there. We also started charging and implementing late fees on there that they weren't doing. Our application fees went up from $30 an applicant to $50, which is now the market. We started implementing something called the move-in fee. Instead of charging security deposits, we found, 3 or 4 years ago in our market, a lot of people were contemplating non-refundable move-in fees. When you move in, we're not going to refund your security deposit. You give us $400. No harm, no foul. There's nothing over the tenant. There's no confrontational thing with the tenant, him expecting money back at the end of 12 months. Now, how we protect ourselves is we have a program called Sure Deposit, which is a surety bond that we make them buy. So at the end of 12 months, if something happened, if there's a damage, there's some type of insurance on there. We love that because you get the money up front. And let's say you have a slow month and you need to actually have some type of special going on.
Slow down a second. This is like a fire hose of information here. Okay, hang on. Time out. Just remember what you were going to say, though, please. You charge a move-in fee of $400. Yes. And, of course, these are... So what's the rent on this typical unit?
Yeah, on average, a typical 2-bedroom apartment that we're renting is $680, $690. Okay. So the barrier of entry is lower because they don't have to come up with
a single family, they're going to pay a much higher deposit, and, that's normal in single family. Okay, so apartments, you have these low deposits. You charge them 0 security deposit, but you charge them a $400 move-in fee. And you just keep the money.
Non-refundable.
You just keep it. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It's just a move-in fee. Okay, that's a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then how do you do this surety bond? I mean, I did a show on this before where, there have been various companies that offer like these rent guarantee insurance and this and that kind of, everybody's got a sort of a funny little spin on this. But what do you do to get the surety bond? Where do you go to get that? How does it work? How much does it cost? And what does it cover? And,
Right now, I think the cost is $87.50 for the tenants. We use a company called Sure Deposit. We've only implemented this in the last.
Is the bond?
Don't remember how much the bond is for. As far as we don't really use it that often because tenants really have to do a decent amount of damage for us to actually collect it, and it's actually building up the pool. So we haven't really used that many because it's just not. Sometimes it's not worth it. I mean,
so the tenant pays $87 to buy the bond, right? Now the typical deal, if it's the same type of bond, I'm thinking about like a bail bond, right? Certainly I've been through bad areas and I've seen billboards everywhere. I think the deal is, thankfully, I've never needed one. Hope I never do. The deal is like you pay 10%. So if they pay $87, is that bond worth $870? Like it's an sort of...
Yeah, I think it's about $1,000. Yeah, I think it's about $1,000. I'm not exactly sure how much it is.
Where do you get that? Like, is there a website that's, I've never searched surety bond, and this is something you can make your tenant buy, right? You require them to buy it, and then if there's damage, you cash it in, and then the bonding company goes after them for the difference, I guess, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. The company we use is called Sure Deposit.
Okay. Sure Deposit. Okay. All right. I'm looking that up. Go ahead. Now keep talking.
And now let's see where I was. If you want me to continue talking about any other, values on there, we mentioned the rent amenities. You put the rent amenities on there, you're going to be able to have a higher quality tenant. You're going to be able to charge more for your apartments. When you have a fitness center in there and you have a tenant who's looking between two properties and, hey, he can cut out his $30 a month gym membership. Well, you can charge a little bit more.
Value add.
Short-term rentals. If you've got a lot of studios or one beds and the market bears it, hey, if you can do a 3-month short-term rental and charge a premium for that, we've done that on a couple of our properties.
You got to kind of watch out for zoning and regulatory, but go ahead. Yeah, that's absolutely good. Okay.
But a lot of them do that. And, if you've got somebody who's working for 3 months or wants to come in for 3 months or is a student and needs something short-term, a lot of guys don't do it. And if you want to do it, you can charge, 20-25% premium on those. And also we're in the Gatlinburg area. So we are also in a nice area where we do have some people who come for vacation for the summertime. So if you have that option,
that's a nice area. I've been there. Yeah.
You can also do pet fees. Pet fees is another thing where people, want to charge a non-refundable, pet deposit and charge another $10 or $15 per month. That's another way of doing it. And like I mentioned, storage. If you have any ability to store, to actually
rent a storage unit on the property, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like a lot of these properties we take over, they have basements. Start building out basements and see if you can create storage there. Or there's a lot of storage companies out there that have those mini storage units. If you want to throw them on your property, they cost between $3,000 and $4,000 per unit. And if you see if there's a demand and there's no self-storage nearby, it's twofold. You're actually adding income on the property and you're also chaining a tenant to a property, because once he starts storing his crap on your property, he's less likely to move after you raise the rent $10 or $15 a month after year one, because he's got his stuff there. So you're giving him an amenity and you're also, sort of having that incentive where he's not going to move out.
Absolutely. I really think that pet rent just needs to become the norm. That just needs to be totally normal now. Most institutional, 99% of all institutional landlords are charging pet rent. For some reason, in the single-family world, that has not caught on enough. And let me tell you, I love animals. I have a dog. I think they're great. I've just never seen them improve the value of a property.
Why?
Okay?
But why?
People will be happy to pay pet rent. It just needs to become a normal thing. That you just charge pet rent of $20-$25 a month. What's the big deal?
What makes you think that it hasn't gone in single family? What's holding it back?
It's just that, mostly like the property managers, and this is one of the things that just annoys me about the single family world. It's the damn property managers. Now, certainly it annoys me in the apartment world. We just got done with a terrible manager on our apartment complex, 139 unit complex, and this manager was awful. So we got a new one. So certainly managers are terrible in every aspect. Okay. But for some reason, it's like government or a big corporation. you know, when it's everybody's money, it's nobody's money. You know, nobody cares. No government employee really gives a damn about how they spend the taxpayers' money, right? And the same with the property manager, whether it be multifamily, single family, it just doesn't matter. The property manager is the biggest pain in our business. And, you know, now there are some great ones out there. I don't, you know, like 39% of them are great and the rest of them suck, or they're somewhere in between. And they just take the path of least resistance. You know, it's like pet rent. I don't want to have to explain that to the prospective tenants. Nobody's doing it in our area. But this is an area where, you know, you can really increase your income. I mean, it's $20-$30. No one's going to, it's not a big deal.
And Jason,
you know?
The whole problem is that they should have that value proposition by saying, hey, listen, we don't take pets. The rent's $700, let's say for a single family, but we can make an exception and we can charge you $725 or $730. The person with an animal will take that much better and say, hey, listen, while this guy's going to actually go out on a limb for me, take my pet, and I'm only going to have to pay $25, I think the majority of pet owners would go on that in a heartbeat. And you're saying it's only $25 or $30, but, you know, we have 910 units. So let's say 50% of our, you know, tenant population has pets. And that's what the number is in Knoxville. Half of renters in Knoxville have pets. So at 900 units, half that is 400 units. If you knock on $20 a month, you're talking about an additional $8,000 per month for our portfolio. That's a lot of money, $72,000 at the end of the year. You do that at 8 cap. What did we just increase the value of our multifamily just by instituting something that should be done and that is done? So every little penny counts in multifamily. And I think in the single family home space, same thing. If you got 100 single family homes and you start instituting that $20 a month pet fee and even a deposit, because you charge a deposit also, you're talking about money that will add up, serious amount of money.
Yeah, right. What else do you want people to know?
There's a lot of money flowing into multifamily. I want people, when they underwrite their deals, to be very conservative. I want you to know what the expenses are in your market to run a property. It's crucial because people, when they're underwriting it, they're always the rosy picture. Hey, I can do it better than the last guy. No, call up your banker. Call up the real estate property management company. Ask them what the expenses are in the market to run the property. Do your due diligence, because my biggest mistake getting into this space was I thought I knew everything like everybody else. I didn't do my due diligence on my properties and I got burned. Fortunately, I learned from my mistakes, went to get help, went to get coaching, and I learned how the asset class, and I just chose an asset class that I thought would be beneficial to me. So focus on it, do your due diligence, learn how the asset works, and then learn how to underwrite the deal. And it's basically 3 facets. It's buy right, manage right, and finance right. If you can do the buy right and the finance right, those are fixed. Once you've got those 2 done and you've bought right, your manage right is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, give out your website.
JakeandGino.com. Basically, we have a podcast called Real Bar Profits. It's all about multifamily real estate. And we have a best-selling book on Amazon.
Fantastic. Gino, thanks for joining us.
Jason, it was my pleasure. I just want to thank everybody out there for taking the time to listen to us. And I hope we added a little value today.
Happy investing, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.